Sawadee krab. So welcome back to AIGS Gem Tips. I hope everybody is surviving this COVID-19 situation. Things are changing now in Thailand. In Thailand, things are starting to get back to normal. The curfew has been lifted. Most of the restaurants have reopened, but the airport remains closed. So no foreign arrivals except for Thai nationals that are coming back. The other bad thing is traffic jams are coming back. It's a sign of things getting back to normal. So life is starting to get back to normal, but it will, I think, never ever become normal again. Our speaker today is coming from Australia. He's going to be talking about opals. But before I introduce him, I just wanted to say one thing, that Australia will always have a special place in my heart. You know why? It's because I spent quite a few years in Australia, actually in Melbourne, during the early days of my life. And I want to show you a very, very old newspaper clipping that I've kept for many, many years. Here it is. It's a local newspaper in Melbourne. Can you see it? It says, "Whole family starts." Yeah, new life opens for whole family. And I don't know if you can see the date, but the date is 9th of April 1969. It says, "The whole family had just arrived from troubled Burma with the full blessing of the Australian government and the kind efforts of Mr. and Mrs. Brown in Laburnum, in Blackburn." So that's my little take why I have a special place in my heart for Australia. So let's get back to the subject. Our speaker today is Damien Cody. He's an expert in opals, of course. Okay. He and his brother Andrew are authors of a top-selling book called The Opal Story, which has been distributed in more than 5 different languages and over 60,000 copies distributed all around the world. Damien has also held many industry positions, including 4 years as Vice President of the International Colored Gemstone Association, or ICA. And he still continues to serve as director. So I think, let me give the floor to Damien, and he will be talking about opals. So in the meantime, everybody, please stay safe and sawadee krab.
Well, thank you, Kennedy, for that glowing introduction. And I wasn't aware that you lived in Melbourne for some time. I wish you were still living here. We could be playing golf at the moment. That'd be nice. A good way to fill in some of our idle time. Look, I'm very grateful to AIGS for inviting me along this evening to have a chat with everybody there about the value factors for opal. Opal's one of those gemstones that people do worry that they don't have enough knowledge of, or they can't understand the quality factors. So with this presentation, I was going to say tonight, but I guess it's morning somewhere, we hope to demystify some of those issues for people and simplify things for you. So we've broken it down into 10 quality factors. Okay. So what I'd like to do in the beginning, we're going to go into the 10 factors, and we're going to leave the most important factor until last. But what I wanted to do was give everybody just a little bit of a taste for Australian opal, how beautiful it is, where it comes from, how it's mined, and the very colourful characters that are involved in the mining process. And then we'll get into the main part of the webinar, and that is the 10 factors. So there are 4 main types of opal in Australia. This is obviously a beautiful black opal. Here's another good example of black opal, which is found in Lightning Ridge, Australia. The black opal is the rarest and the most valuable of the 4 types of opal. It's distinguished by this the rich colours, the dark body tone of the stone that allows it to really emanate rich, beautiful colours. The next type is light opal. Light opal doesn't have the dark body tone, still very beautiful in its own right. It's exactly the same composition as a black opal, except it doesn't have the common opal at the back of the stone to give it that rich, dark look that a black opal is known for. The third type is boulder opal. And boulder opal occurs in Queensland, Australia. I'll show you a map of the mining locations shortly. Boulder opal is characterised by the fact that it's found within a hard ironstone sandstone rock. And generally it's found with thin seams of opal within the host rock. And where we can cut a stone, keeping some of the host rock on the back and the opal face, that's the way we would like to present it. And that's the main character of a boulder opal. It's generally because of the way it's found in these thin bands or veins of opal. It's generally flat, maybe a little bit of a wavy surface, and sometimes you'll see a little bit of the ironstone on the face. The next one is boulder matrix opal, or opal in host rock. So this is where the opal is diffused in veins and rivulets throughout the host rock. So that you can see here, there's evidence of the ironstone host rock on the face of the stone. So here's an example of some boulder matrix opal. We're going to talk just very briefly on new classification of opal, and within that classification, boulder matrix opal will be termed opal in host rock, whereas boulder opal, the previous slide that I showed you, will be opal on host rock. Australian fields are also known for producing incredible opalized fossils from the prehistoric age. So Cretaceous period fossils of dinosaurs and marine animals are found. This is a beautiful dinosaur toe bone. This is a rib bone from a plesiosaur, which was a seagoing marine reptile that swam in the seas 110 million years ago. This is from a juvenile and was probably an animal that was a couple of meters long, but they did grow to 10, 15, 20 meters at times. There's a beautiful little toe bone from a raptor dinosaur. Opalized gastropods and clamshells. And this is opalized belemnite fossils. A belemnite is pictured, or an image of a belemnite here. They once again existed in the Cretaceous period, about 100 million years ago. And it was a prehistoric squid-like animal. It's extinct now. And you can see this backbone carapace area, which comes from this area of the belemnite. We find examples of the opalization of that part of the animal. This is a pseudomorph, actually. It looks like a crystal, and that's because it's actually a pseudomorph of a mineral that did form in crystal structures like this. The mineral was called AIGS, and AIGS existed up until the end of the Ice Age, so about 65 million years ago. When the Ice Age finished, pardon me, the mineral disappeared off the face of the Earth. But the opal here took the form of the AIGS because it formed in a sedimentary process and filled the void where this AIGS mineral existed. So these are very rare. They come from one place on planet Earth, and that's a tiny little opal mining town called White Cliffs. These are very rare opalized mammal jaw bones from an animal called Calicodon. This animal was one of the first animals to exist on planet Earth, so you can imagine how important these fossils are to science today. It was a small animal, a bit like a platypus. Some of you might be familiar with the platypus. It's a little duck-billed otter-like animal. Today's version of the platypus doesn't have any teeth, but this prehistoric animal had teeth. So these are very rare and very important to science. This is opalized fossil. It's about 2.5 meters long. It's in our Sydney National Opal Collection Museum. That's our own company museum. About 60 to 70% of the opalized bones, of the bones are opalized. Some areas had to be reconstructed. For some reason, we very rarely get the skull and the jawbone of the pliosaur. We do find opalized teeth, but the head's often missing. And there were a few, missing bones because when these animals, I guess, they were sea-faring monsters, if you like, and they probably, when they died, bits and pieces floated around the ocean for a while, and maybe predators like sharks and things were moving things around. So it's very rare to find a specimen like this that's complete or near complete. So here we are. The mining fields of Australia are all found within this lighter yellow area. It might be hard to see on your screens, but this lighter area here is what used to be an inland sea called the Eromanga Sea. The Eromanga Sea dried up 65 million years ago and left with it large deposits of sand, and of course with sand obviously is associated silica. So it's the silica in these sandy desert areas that were important in the formation of Australian opal. The black dots are the known opal mining areas, or the main opal mining areas, and the red area is the area that produces the boulder opal and the matrix opal in the host rock. So the opals are very colourful, and so too are some of the characters that mine them. They're really having to live and survive in outback Australia in very harsh conditions. And they have to be terribly resourceful to survive out there and to make a go of the business. This is a character who had false teeth with opal on them. So he used to charm all the ladies with his smile. Lightning Ridge is the area that produces our black opal. The population in most of our mining towns fluctuates greatly with the fortunes of the opal mining. So You know, when a new find is producing opal, the population swells, and of course, as things become a bit more difficult, it falls away. It also falls away over the summer periods when it's too hot to mine. So it's and the occupants in Lightning Ridge are generally living in camps or shacks out at their mines. So often the census data is not terribly accurate in these areas. So opal mining is takes place in these outback areas, as I said, and the building materials were hard to get. They still are really, but they were very hard to find, and people had to use whatever resources they can. Here is an example of a camp in Lightning Ridge at the 3 Mile Field, and you can see it's built with local stone and bits of timber and iron cobbled together. And this camp was actually Andrew Cody, my brother's camp, back in the early 70s. And today it's being looked after by the Lightning Ridge Historical Society. Here's another camp at the 9 Mile Field, and you can see the use of beer bottles here for windows and a car door for a window. So when it gets too hot, you simply wind down the car window to let the air through. In many parts, there are no facilities at all. So the miners at Glengarry, which is about 100 k's from Lightning Ridge, decided that they needed to have a pub, a hotel. So they built a business out there, and from whatever materials they could find, had plenty of cold beer, and they called it the pub. They called it the Hilton Hotel. So this is the famous Glengarry Hilton. So often, when we have visitors coming out to visit Lightning Ridge, I tell them that we'll go and have lunch at the Hilton, and they're very surprised when they get here to discover that the Hilton they were thinking of is not quite the same. Temperatures, as I said, in the mining areas can get up to 45, 50 degrees in summer. So in some areas, the miners are able to actually live underground in old mine workings. This is Cooper Pedy. It used to be, part of the inland sea, so it's very, very flat, and they look like anthills as far as the eye can see. This is a method of opal mining still goes on today in Lightning Ridge, where they're using a hoist to bring the material up to the surface. Quite often they'll just empty the bucket into their truck. So that comes from underground, their mine underground, and they remove the dirt so they can take it away to wash. This is a newer system called a blower, and this truck has a big diesel motor on there, and they have large pipes going underground into their underground mine, and it's like a vacuum cleaner, and it sucks up the dirt up through here into this hopper, and then when the hopper's full, it opens up into the truck. Open cut mining is obviously another process that's not always allowed in some areas, but in other areas you can open cut. It depends on the structure of the ground and how the opal forms as to whether you open cut or do a shaft mining. Here, this is in Koroit. We're down about 15, 18 meters before we hit the level. Some areas are quite shallow, 7 or 8 meters, but in other parts of Australia, you can go down 20 or 30 meters, sometimes more, to find the opal level. Once again, some heavy equipment is used to get down to the opal level. You can see the earth here. You can see some fault lines going down here, and so this is what in a sedimentary process where the silica and the opal format formed in these fault lines. So these are very important when looking at where to look for the next opal find. And what they're looking for in the case of black opal is nodules of opal, like this one here, inset here. This is a beautiful black opal. In the opal fields, they call them knobbies. So they're nodules coated in sand or clay. And you can see there's quite good play of colour in some parts of it. And in other parts, there is this dark area, which is common opal. So it's black or grey, sometimes blue, but with no play of colour. So all play of colour in opal is associated with some common opal. So if you're not finding the common opal, you're not going to find the precious opal either. So in the case of black opal, some of this common opal is used to give the stone that rich, dark, vibrant look. This is some light opal rough material. These are very large, thick veins of colour, very beautiful. And this is boulder opal. You can see here this stone. The stones the rocks will fracture along the veins of opal, and sometimes you'll get a split straight through the middle of the opal. So you'll have opal on both sides. And you can see the ironstone here, the ironstone sandstone that's associated with the boulder opal fields. So we're going to start looking now at the quality factors that we use, and the 10 most important ones. There are probably a few more, but we're going to look at the 10 most important ones. But I thought I'd start by just quoting one of the founders and pioneers of modern gemology, Richard Liddycoat, who was the first chairman of GIA in America. And he was quoted as saying, "In terms of difficulty in grading, on a scale of 1 to 10, diamond would be a 1, the easiest, and opal would be a 10, the most difficult." So even the best gemologists in the world find it sometimes a little difficult to grade opals. It's not like the 4 C's with diamonds. We're going to be looking at 10 factors here, and some of them have exponential effects on the value of the opal. So here I've given you 6 samples of real stones. These are all stones that are actually used in the Cody opal master sets. And this was used to depict black opal quality. Now you can see in the top left on your screen is a bunch of opals. These are all about the same size, a bunch of black opals, and they're all quite bright, lively, dark, rich body tone. And as we move through from left to right along the top and then down to the bottom, from left to right, you'll see that gradually the brilliance and the fire and the colour start to wane a little bit. And so here you're looking at 6 different grades of black opal, if you like. Down here in the bottom right would be the lowest value out of all of these stones. So already visually, when we start assembling grading like this, you as an untrained opal grader can see very clearly the difference. So hopefully by the end of this webinar tonight, you'll get an idea as to the factors that go into it. So the first one we looked at was in the red colours. Here we're looking at green with some blue. And once again, from top left, across the top, down to the bottom, and then moving across to the right, the bottom right, you'll see lacking in brilliance and fire and colour. And top left, it's almost electric. And here we've got blue with some green. So once again, same process. Top left, lots of fire. Bottom right, a little dull. The same can apply, same kind of factors apply when looking at the quality of light opal. So you'll see top left there, some nice strong colour and brilliance coming through, big patches of colour, brilliant patterns. And then moving through, there's 8 different grades here. You'll see bottom right there, starting to look a little dull grey, lifeless. So once again, you know, there's 8 different quality grades. Now this is boulder opal. This is opal with a face of opal naturally occurring in the host rock, the ironstone brown host rock. So if we flipped all of these stones over, you'd see the host rock, the ironstone. And here we've got 5 grades for you to look at. So top left being the better quality stones, down to bottom right, lower quality, still quite good, but lower quality. So we're moving into the first of the 10 factors we want to talk about in this webinar. And the first one is opal type. We have to work out what type of opal it is, because factors like supply, demand, market, durability, aesthetics will have an impact. And there are many different types of opal from all around the world. So, you know, they're different forms. Some obviously common opal, like the orange one there, and the pink and the blue, pink and blue from Peru. So some don't even have a play of colour, still very beautiful and highly sought after. But you need to obviously work out where the opal is from and the kind of opal that it is. I spoke earlier about the new classification of opal. This is sitting with CIGO at the moment. The Australian industry was asked to put together a classification with a view to a new blue book being developed by CIGO for opal. So with the opal classification, there's treated opal, there's synthetic opal, there's opal with a play of colour and without a play of colour, and there's also now, obviously, with the large amount of material coming into the market, there's absorbent opal, which is hydrophane opal, and non-absorbent opal or impervious opal from other locations. So we now have 8 different classifications for opal. Natural precious opal, that's impervious. The second one is natural precious opal on host rock, used to be called boulder opal. The third one is natural precious opal in host rock, formerly boulder matrix opal. Common opal, that's opal that doesn't have a play of colour. Hydrophane opal, that's opal that has a degree of absorbency. 6 is treated opal. 7 is composite opal, so doublets, triplets, that kind of thing. And of course, synthetics and imitations, number 8. So all of these 8 factors will have a value determined by the market. This is quite an obvious one of carat weight. You know, the higher the carat weight, the more value in the stone, of course. Unlike diamonds, where you tend to have an exponential increase in the price per carat as the carat weight increases. With opal, it's a little bit of a bell curve, if you like. So this is an example, starting with 1 carat stones, moving through to 25 carat stones. And you can see this kind of bell curve shape. And that's because the highest value, I guess, per carat, we're talking about stones with equivalent color and attributes, of course. So stones between, say, 5 to 10 carats would probably, or 12 carats, would probably attract the highest price per carat. So there's that kind of bell curve. Under a carat, it's quite low. It increases very steeply, 2, 3, 4, 5 carats, and then it starts to decrease gradually as the stone becomes greater. So I guess what this is saying is that the market is looking for ring stones and pendants, pendants and earring stones around this weight as the most sought after area. Number 3 is body tone. Now body tone, I've mentioned this word a few times coming through. Body tone is not the diffracted colours coming through the stones, you know, the red, the orange, yellow, green, blue. The body tone is actually the degree of light or dark in the stone, and it's a grayscale that's been used. And the nomenclature and the new classification uses the Munsell scale, which is basically from N1 black through to N9, which is almost white. So here are some examples of N1, N2, 3, all the way through to N9. And here is some these are once again from the Cody Opal master sets. And you can see very dark body tone, rich dark body tone here, N1, moving through N2, N3, N4, N5, starting to get a little bit lighter, N6, 7, 8 and 9, you know, kind of almost pale white. So the body tone can have quite a big factor. It's not the most important factor. Remember, we're leaving that one till last. So the body tone is not the be all and end all of valuing a stone. It's a factor. Here is the example in our master sets of actual stones, and here you can see the body tones depicted in colour patches. And black opal is determined from N1 to N4. So anything with an N1 to N4 body tone would be called black opal. So then N5 and N6 is what is termed dark opal. Not a term that's used very often, mind you, because I think black and dark opal are part of the black opal family. But technically, yes, N1 to N4 is black opal. N5 and N6 is dark opal. And 7, 8 and 9 is light opal. There you have it there. So there is a little bit of science to, you know, what is a black opal and what is a light opal. The Munsell scale is the answer. So this is an important one. The dominant diffracted colours that come out in an opal. I've got refracted there. It should be diffracted because the colour that's displayed in opal is white light diffracted back out to you in the colours of the spectrum. And that's caused by the silica structure within the stone and the spaces between the structure. So very uniform, large spheres of opal will produce red colour, and small uniform arrangement of the spheres will produce the blues. And where those spheres of silica are not uniformly stacked or arranged, within the stone. Then you have what we would call common opal or potch opal. So you don't get the play of colour. So the colours of the spectrum, you know, from blue all the way through to red, are also very important value factors. So blue and purple being the more common colours, the lower value stones generally. As you start getting green coming into the stone, and yellow, orange, and then at the end of it, reds, that's where the high values will come in. So here's a particularly beautiful red-orange black opal. And once again, here is a stone with a lot of red saturation in the stone. So these are very fine examples of top quality colour. Number 5, transparency. So in a black opal, transparency is not a great thing, because you really want that opaque, dark, rich body tone coming through. So on the right, there is a stone that has very little transparency, and that would have higher value than this more transparent black opal. The opposite is true, however, for light opal. So in a light opal, this stone here on the left is quite opaque. It has lower value than a stone that has a nice transparent, what we call crystal look. So that is another factor. Number 6, inclusions. So some of the common inclusions found in opal are sand, ironstone, which is very common in the boulder opal inclusions, gypsum, potch, which is opal that has no play of colour. So the potch would be black, grey, that's often a dark colour, could be white. Pyrite is sometimes found. Manganese is found in a lot of the boulder opal, and also there could be crazing or fractures within the stone. So normally an inclusion that is found on the face of a stone will devalue the stone. So you would want to try and avoid those if you were selecting, but if you're valuing something, you would need to value it down when this occurs. Now here's an example of where inclusions actually add value to the stone, because what we have here are lines of common opal or potch opal within the stone, and these are delineating the different colour patterns that you can see. So this is in fact what we call a harlequin pattern. So the inclusions here are helping the stone. Here's another example of where inclusions can add value to a stone. So here we have manganese, the lines within this boulder opal, lines of manganese inclusions. And it gives the appearance of a church window or a stained glass window. So very attractive in a stone. So yeah, sometimes they can add value. Moving on to number 7, and this is one that people often talk about, and that is pattern. So opal is a phenomenal gemstone. It diffracts light, white light, in many mysterious ways. Sometimes it will provide you with an incredible pattern or display of colour. Let's go through some of the patterns that we do see from time to time. The one that I've just mentioned earlier, the harlequin pattern. This is where there are squares or diamond shapes and very clear shapes within the stone. This is probably the most sought after and desirable pattern, and would add a good deal of value to a gemstone. Here's another example of a pattern, the harlequin pattern. You can see these geometric shapes, very kind of linear geometric shapes, often in a square shape. So that's the harlequin pattern. Here we have a peacock pattern, and you can see these lines of potch in here. The color pattern rolls up and down, a rolling flash of color up and down between these lines, and it's radiates out like a peacock tail. So this pattern is called the peacock. Here's another example of peacock. You can see these lines here, and within the lines the color rolls up and down between the lines. This is a straw pattern, so like hay or cut grass or straw. It can be any color, but yeah, it looks like long pieces of straw. This is a variation on the straw, and this is chaff. It's called chaff pattern. Chaff, for those not familiar with that term, chaff is where the straw is cut up into small pieces, and fed to the animals. So this pattern we call chaff. This is one that we see quite often. It's called Chinese writing, and you can see what looks to be Chinese characters within the stone. Very often with the Chinese writing, people who can read Chinese characters often see Chinese words or characters within the stone. And this is the rolling flash, so it's as you tilt the stone, the flash will roll across the stone, a bit like a cat's eye. And occasionally we have asterisms within the pattern. These are very rare. This is actually a very old photograph of a stone that we had 25 years ago. And you can see from this central area here, the pattern shows colors radiating out from the middle. The stone was actually much better than this old photo shows. This is ribbon pattern, where we have lines of color which will roll up and down the stone as you tilt the stone. This is flagstone pattern. Flagstone is a word used for to describe paving stones that are irregular, and that's here we have an example of what could look like paving stones that have been put together like a jigsaw. So the flagstone pattern. And this is a beautiful example of brush stroke. It looks like the colors have been applied to the stone with a painter's brush. Quite incredible. And this is broad flash. This is where, when you tilt the stone, you will have very large patches of color. And these flashes can change color as you move the stone, but generally they're very large in nature, the pattern itself. This is the opposite of broad flash. This is pinfire, where the patterns are very small. So this is generally a pattern that doesn't command much, in the way of value in comparison to the other patterns. So moving on to number 8, and this is the thickness of the color bar. So a thick color bar, you can see this top example here, you can see there's quite a good thickness of play of color. And what that does is firstly it allows our cutters to cut a beautiful cabochon shape. But it also provides great depth to the stone, depth and luster, so you can look right into the stone and have colors coming from deep within the stone. In the middle we have a medium dome stone, and the bottom quite a flat color bar. So yes, a stone that has a nice high cabochon with a thick color bar is going to be more valuable than a stone that has a very thin color bar and might be quite flat. So in the same kind of mold, shape can have a big impact. So generally symmetrical shapes are what customers are looking for. So often the shape that opals are cut into is the oval. The oval cabochon is the most desirable shape. Occasionally, you know, like in this left-hand image here, we can cut the stone into the shape of a butterfly wing, or, you know, something else that we can depict with an odd shape. So shapes that have undulating surfaces, irregular outside shape are generally less attractive to most buyers, so the price would come down. So here's an example of that beautiful butterfly-shaped stone that displays a peacock pattern. So it was designed by an American jeweler to be worn as a pendant and a brooch. And here's the final piece here. Here's another example on shape. We bought this very big stone. It was almost 100 carats, and it was cut and polished in this manner. But you can see the outside shape is quite irregular. You can also see on the surface there's a depression here. There's also some sand inclusions right in the middle of the stone. So these factors really held back the saleability of this stone. We decided that it needed to be recut, and we recut it successfully, but it went from nearly 100 carats to 30 carats. The 30 carats of the most beautiful black opals with, you know, very much, you know, a lot of fiery red and great spectrum of colors. So we cut 2 large ovals and a teardrop. Total weight was just over 30 carats, but the value of these 3 stones more than doubled once we had cut them down from 100 to 30 carats. So shape can make a big difference in terms of its marketability and desirability. So now we're coming to the big one. So we need a drum roll here. If you're all doing drum rolls, listening to this, the most important factor when evaluating an opal is number 10, brilliance. So brilliance is the amount of light returned back to the eye. So white light goes into the stone and it's diffracted back through the spectral colors. And it's the amount of light that's diffracted back to your eyes that is the brilliance. So a very fine stone will really give a lot of light return back to the viewer. And, you know, in some cases, it's almost electric. So here's some examples of stones from Cody Opal's master sets. You can see AAA graded stones. Now these are all being graded roughly the same size, and also a color range that includes, you know, the palette is green, blue, yellow, and orange generally. So we haven't gone into the reds in this color palette here. So these were sorted that way and graded into AAA down to D. So you can see the AAA stones are electric, very vibrant, a lot of brilliant colors being flashed back to the eye. And as we go down through the grades, you'll notice that potch might start appearing, large areas of extinction of color. Sometimes, you know, they're quite dull and lifeless, maybe looking a bit gray rather than, you know, fiery, brilliant display of color. So, you know, here is a very good example of 6 different grades of brilliance. So here's a stone that we sold last year. It was a 12 carat stone and displayed all the colors of the rainbow in an incredible display of color. Beautiful red, the rarest color of all. Extremely brilliant display. A beautiful shape. This stone really is nearing probably perfection. You know, maybe the only thing it might not have is a rare pattern, but it makes up for everything else with an incredible display. So how do you assess all of these 10 factors, you know, when you're looking at them? Well, at Cody Opal, we developed some master sets. AIGS have one of our master sets, and it enables people, and there are 9 of these boards in each set, some 216 stones, and it enables somebody to firstly identify the type of opal that it is. It will also it'll allow you to look at the body tone. It'll allow you to compare the transparency, and of course the brilliance and fire in terms of quality. Very useful tool. We've nearly sold out of these. There were 60 sets. I think there's maybe 4 or 5 left. We're nearly finished with the Opal handbook, which is probably going to be a few hundred pages. I think we're trying to condense it down. But this is years and years of research being put together in this handbook. And of course, the Opal Story book is a guidebook that's in 5 languages, and we've sold some 60,000 of these. So these are only a very small 40-page booklet, but concise and very useful, especially in a retail environment. So thank you everybody for tuning in. I do hope that we've been able to provide you with some comfort now about how to assess the quality of an opal, and demystify some of that, simplify it if as best we can, and that you know, you'll be much more confident dealing with opal. If you need any more information, you can go to AIGS, or you can take a look at our website, codyopal.com. You can also shoot us an email there if there's something else you need from us. So I thank you very much for your attention. I thank AIGS for allowing me to participate in this wonderful webinar and providing gem tips, and I hope it's been helpful. Thank you very much.